All right, guys. Today we're going to talk about how to find the volume of a cone. So pretty much how much space is inside of a cone, and we can measure that a variety of different ways. Mainly today we'll be looking at cubic measurements. And as I mentioned today in class, because the base of a cone is a circle, what it essentially means is we're not going to have very nice numbers to come out of this. Mostly because we're going to be using pi. Okay, and whenever we use pi, um, we know the pi is an irrational number. Now, I do want to say this as a side note. IXL says use 3.14 for pi. I hate this. I really don't like it. I think it's a bad practice. It makes you guys believe that these two things are the same, and they are not. I really would rather you guys just use pi in your calculator and round at the end, but this is what we got, so it is what it is, okay? So pretty much it's, when we talked about prisms and cylinders over the last couple of days, right? We figured out that was pretty much the area of the base, so the volume equal to the area of the base times the height. This is slightly different up until the fact that I no longer have all of this space. What I have with a cone is essentially only this middle section, right? So what happens is it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Therefore, it's not the same thing as a prism or the same thing as a cylinder in the fact that the top and the bottom are not the same shape, right? So the bottom is a circle and the top is a point. So to counteract this, we're going to take a third. So it's going to be still the same thing as a cylinder, pi times radius squared times height. That has not changed. The only thing is we're going to take 1/3 of it. And what that essentially means is if I have a cone and a cylinder with the same base and the same height, then I can fit the amount of things in here 3 times. 3 of these will fit into the same cylinder. It's kind of hard to see. I do have an experiment I normally show you guys in class where we use some water to fill up a cone 3 times. But we're not at school, so next best thing, GIFs, right? So here we have a cylinder and a cone, and they are the same radius and the same height, right? And what happens is if you use the volume of the cone 3 times, it will fill up the cylinder, right? Now, 2 things have to be true there. They have to have the same radius, and they have to have the same height. So they're showing me they're the same height, and that essentially, if you take 1/3 of that cylinder, or 3 of the cones, that they will be the same. Okay, so there's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. Now, it's just one of those things where if you guys don't know how to do calculus, I really can't show you any other way than this. So for right now, you're just going to have to believe me for it, okay? So if you're given a question like this, okay, the volume of a cone is equal to 1/3 pi times the radius squared, that's the base, area of the base times the height. You could also say, because it's all multiplication, you could also say this, pi times radius squared times the height divided by 3. This is also acceptable. So pick whatever works for you. That doesn't really matter. But here my radius is 6 and my height is 18. So say our volume is equal to 1/3 pi times my radius, which is 6, squared times my height, which is 18. All right, so let's go ahead and let's figure this out. Well, 6 squared I know is 36. And 1/3, right? So we got to do the exponents first. Now we can do whatever order we want, right? Because now all that's left is straight multiplication. Well, I do know that 1/3 of 36 is 12, right? So maybe that'll help me out. So I have pi times 12 times 18, right? That one, yeah, you're breaking out your calculator for that one, okay? So break out my calculator. Okay. Again, 12 times 18, I don't know off the top of my head. If you're good, maybe you do. And 12 times 18 is 260. I should know that. Matt, you should know that one. So your volume is equal to 216 pi yards cubed, right? Remember, 1, 2 here, right, for the squared, and 3. So yards twice and a third time. So normally I would say evaluate in terms of pi, say 216 times pi, and that would be your answer. But IXL says to do 216 times 3.14, and I'm going to show you guys why I don't like this. Is that you get a different decimal, right? Like you get like a whole different number. Yeah, you get 678, that's great, but you get a whole different decimal. So I really don't like the IXL approach. I really don't. It's very archaic, meaning it's like it's old. It's an old-timey thing to do, but again, what would I say it is? I would say this is the most accurate answer. And if I said round to the nearest hundredth, 678.58, or what IXL wants, which is multiply times 3.14, right? So instead of multiplying by pi, multiply times 3.14, 678.24. 678.24. And again, totally different answers, right? So again, I know that's what they want, and I know it's a little bit simpler, but I really think it downplays the importance of pi. So a cone has a height of 19 inches and a radius of 10. What is its volume? Okay, again, use 3.14. So we'll say volume is equal to 1/3 pi times the radius squared times the height. Well, that's 1/3 times pi. My radius was 10 squared times the height of 19. Okay. So again, I know that 10 squared is 100. So my volume is equal to 1/3 of pi times 100 times 19. I know 100 times 19 is going to be 1/3 times pi times 1900. Okay. And that, again, put inside your calculator. So we'll say pi. I'll show you, we can kind of do this last, but if you want to, you can do it as 1/3. 1/3 times pi times 1900 should give you that. That's your actual real answer. But again, they wanted to use 3.14, so that could be 1/3 times 3.14 times 1900. Okay, and again, it gives you a totally different number. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, so again, see, you got two different numbers here. So again, what is the number they want? They want this one right here. So that's 1988.66, I guess, the nearest hundredth. So your IXL answer will be 1986.67. Again, and what's your unit? This inches cubed. It's still volume. I do want to show you guys, if you don't like using, where'd it go? If you don't like using fractions, again, I told you guys from the beginning, you could also write this as pi times 1900 over 3. That's the same thing as multiplying by 1/3. And if you see, if we just said 3.14, which is what they wanted, times 1900 divided by 3, you'll see you'll get the same answer. So if you don't like fractions, if you don't like multiplying by fractions, you can turn it into a division problem if you'd like. Okay. And the only thing you really have to worry about is, hey, what if you're working backwards? It says here's your volume. What's the radius? Okay. So stick to the plan. Volume of a cone is equal to 1/3 pi times the radius squared times the height. Okay. Well, I know the volume is 1,519.76. 1/3 pi radius squared times the height, and the height is 12 millimeters, right? Okay. Well, again, guys, it's pretty much going just kind of backwards. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to isolate r. Okay. So I would say the easiest thing is you can simplify this. 1/3 times 12 is going to be 4, right? So right off the bat, let's simplify this. Before you start multiplying, dividing everything, I get pi times the radius squared times 4 is equal to 1519.76, okay? And again, how am I going to isolate this? I'm going to divide this side by 4, and this side by 4. So now I have pi times the radius squared. I've got 1516.76 divided by 4 is going to be 379.19. 379.19. Okay. Now what? Now I gotta divide both sides by pi, right? Divide this side by pi, this side by pi. Again, don't forget pi is a number. They want you to divide by 3.14. So again, let's divide that number by 3.14. Okay. And what do we get? We get your radius squared is equal to, what I said was 120.76. This number, 120.76. 20.761. Okay. And your last step, and again, I don't know if this is something we've covered, but again, in order to get rid of, so no, we covered it. We did the Pythagorean theorem. In order to get rid of squares, we need to take the square root of the number. So we need to take the square root of this number. Okay. So on my calculator, it's right here. Let's say square root of 120.76, 11465. Okay. And I will get 10.98. Okay. Or 10.99. So the radius is equal to 10.99 millimeters. Okay. So anyway, that's about as hard as they get. If you can't do these, that's fine. We'll talk about it next week. But for sure, you should be able to do the questions like this. Okay. So good luck, and I'll talk to you guys soon.